The Writer's Dossier podcast is a proud member of the Authors on the Air Global Radio Network.
Hi, I'm Bruce Borgos, and this is my Writer's Dossier.
No writers were harmed in the production of this podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Writer's Dossier podcast. I'm Jeff Circle, your host, as usual here. Today we have a special guest, special to me, and once this episode is done, he's going to be special to you because you're going to love him. His name is Bruce Borgos, author of a lot of cool stuff. This is his latest, Blue Horse, out now. Go get it, full stop. And you may recognize this, Shades of Mercy, fantastic. But I discovered my friend Bruce, and welcome to the program, by the way. Thanks for showing up.
Oh, gosh, thanks for having me.
Your first book, The Bitter Past, was the one that got me onto you. And I'll tell you right now, and this is something that we do here at the Writer's Dossier, two things. One, we're kind of quick with these interviews because we respect your time. We want you to get to know these writers and their books. And the other thing is we shout out a lot of people. It's not about the show or me. It's about the writers in the books. And I discovered you, Bruce, through Dave Temple and the Thriller Zone when The Bitter Past came out. I talked about this in the dossier that you disclosed a couple years ago at the writersdossier.com. I said I was cutting the grass, listening to the podcast with these headphones on, and I'd never heard of you before. I listened to your story and was just right then I stopped the mower and I went to Audible and bam, got The Bitter Past, and I'm listening to the Bitter Past on Audible, and I'm totally in from the very beginning. So since then, your material has been fantastic. So it's an honor really to have you as a friend, but as a writer, I'm so impressed with these books. So good on you, man.
Well, thanks, buddy. I mean, it's nice to get material like that I can use in my social media posts. Now I can say something like, this book is lawnmower stopping.
You will full stop, get this book. So yeah. So here's the question. That's a big setup for 3 books that you have out right now. That's from Minotaur, which is a great publisher who have had a great run here with these. And so I'm a little torn. I want to tell people to go out and get The Bitter Past because I love that. And then follow that right up with Shades of Mercy and then go right into Blue Horse. But Blue Horse is out today. When we drop it
next Tuesday.
When we drop this podcast, it'll be today.
You're right.
So little inside baseball for everyone out there listening and watching on YouTube. We're filming this on July 1st and it'll be out next Tuesday, July 8th. Can't wait. You were nice enough to send me a copy of Blue Horse, and dude, you're killing it. A lot of people fall off. You know, that first book, they put so much time and energy into that, like you do the first chapter or the first paragraph, but you keep on building. So I want to shut up and give you a chance to talk. Tell us about the Blue Horse. Tell us what Sheriff Porter Beck, my hero, is up to in this 3rd installment of your mystery series.
Well, sure. And that's a great lead in. I appreciate it. So again, the book is the 3rd in a series, and it's a mystery series. Porter Beck is a rural county sheriff in the high desert of Nevada, very close to all of that very secretive government land that is out there and has been doing everything since, including testing nuclear weapons and Area 51 for the last 70 or so years. So lots of interesting things happen out where he lives, despite the fact that his county only has 6,000 people in it. And in the first book, as you mentioned, in The Bitter Past, Porter Beck is just retiring from the military. He's been in military intelligence for most of his career. He's a language expert. He's got some unique gifts, but he leaves the military with a somewhat debilitating eye disease. And he has what's commonly referred to as night blindness. So while he sees pretty normally during the day, the rods and the cones in his retinas don't work well at night, and he can't see at all. He's as blind as a bat at night for the most part now. So he comes home and he takes the job that his father had as sheriff for more than 30 years. And he's a little bit of a fish out of water. Yeah, he's had some great training in the military. He's had some great experiences. He knows how to handle himself. He's very He's very quick-minded and can think himself out of a jam, but it's a little different for him. So he's getting used to that. And he's trying to deal with this eye issue. And so without telling you too much of the story ahead of time or spoiling anything, he's dealing with those things. He's got a very, very tough case to handle right out of the bat. And then as we get into the second and the third books, what I tried to do, Jeff, is I tried to, like you said, I tried to progress the story and the characters, Beck especially, in the respect that he needed to change. He needs to grow. He needs to change a little bit like all of us do. I didn't want to keep him kind of stagnant and the same person. His eye disease is advancing, although incrementally, but he's looking at the long-term prospect potentially of being completely blind in some period of years. And that's distressing him in a number of ways, especially because he is now trying to do the job of the chief law enforcement officer of his county, and he can't see at night. For half the day, he can't see it. And on top of that, he has a new girlfriend, a woman who's a detective with the state police by the name of Charlie Bluehorse. She's a Paiute, and they seem to hit it off really well. But he's a little afraid, too, of saddling her with this, of having to take care of him if he's going to end up being completely blind. So there's those two story arcs that keep going throughout the series. And in the Blue Horse, we see that kind of coming to a head in a number of ways. So his relationship with Charlie has gotten very serious. His eye disease is at the point where he needs something good to happen. And there's not a lot out there that really can help him do that. But at the same time, he's trying to solve for the murder of a BLM agent who goes down in a helicopter while herding a bunch of wild horses for the government. And Beck,
which is a real thing, by the way. They do that in your area.
Yeah, they do that. That's a very good point. So a lot of people don't know. A lot of people who live in other parts of the country are not aware that, first of all, we even have wild horses in this country. that they roam free in certain places. And, obviously in the West predominantly, and in Nevada especially, where the majority of those horses live. But it's a highly charged political issue, as you can imagine, because cattle ranchers do not want horses grazing on the land that their cattle graze on. So there's a lot of behind the scenes money in Congress and lobbying that takes place on their side, as well as the side of horse advocates who don't want to see anything happen to those wild horses. But so there's a lot of emotion. There's a lot of distrust. And Beck is trying to figure out who's really at fault here in this helicopter going down. And there's some other bodies that kind of show up along the way, some more people who get hurt. And it's becoming very intense very quickly. And Charlie and Beck are out there trying to figure out how, one, to put a stop to it, and second, figure out who's really behind it. So the other thing that I brought into play in the Blue Horse is another thing that is very topical right now, and that is rare earth mining and lithium especially. And that is also taking place out here in Nevada. We have one of the largest, if not the largest, lithium mine in the United States, and they're trying to make it bigger. The problem with that is that extracting those minerals from the ground requires an awful lot of water. And water is one thing that we are in very short supply of out here in Nevada. So again, there is some politics at play, some forces at play that are pretty much willing to do what's necessary in order for their agenda to go forward. So that's kind of the backdrop of the story.
Well, okay, you touched on a lot of great things. There's so many questions. First of all, I'll start with the most recent thing you said about rare earth minerals. Have you had the chance to actually go down to MP materials down? It's not far. It's kind of toward California. That rare, it's the only one in America that actually is extracting rare earth minerals at that level. Did you do any research there, or did you read their company?
Yeah, I certainly looked at the research online about that, but I know the Thacker Pass area in Nevada, which also has the mine that's being operated by, it's a Canadian company, and I think they're going to continue to do that. But I've seen mining operations up close here, being in Nevada, where we've always had a ton of that going on.
This sounds like a combination for people who like to get in front of the TV and stream, a combination of Longmire, Yellowstone, and The Pale Rider with Clint Eastwood, and you're bringing that right to light. Speaking of Longmire, I want to talk to you about Craig Johnson. Now, Craig Johnson created Longmire and the Longmire books, a sheriff in Montana, large territory. Beck's got a large territory. Tell us a little bit about Craig Johnson, his influence on you, both before you wrote the books and now after you've written these books. He's really embraced them. And I think you actually have an event coming up with him too. Tell us about that relationship a little bit.
Well, he's been a huge, probably the biggest influence as an author on me that I've had at this point in my life. I mean, for a long time before I knew about Craig Johnson, obviously, I read extensively a lot of mystery and thriller authors, but I loved Craig's stories, his Longmire stories, probably more than anything I had ever read, specifically because there wasn't a lot of good novels, at least I thought at the time, when I started reading his, about the modern West.
Yes.
We all love the old Westerns, that took place in the 1900s or the 1800s. And I'm a history nut, I love that stuff. But the West is a marvelous place. It's a magnificent place. And Craig really brought it to life for me. As somebody who lives out here, it was great to see someone pay such great attention to the detail of the West and in telling a great story with great characters. So he has been that great influence for me. He was so kind to blurb The Bitter Past for me. And I actually don't have an event scheduled with him this year. We do kind of cross paths pretty frequently. So I don't know for sure, but hopefully he's still reading my stuff. I'm still reading his.
Absolutely. And his work is great. And you're right. There was a gap there. Thrillers took over and international espionage and the Cold War and all of that. You found a way to work in the Cold War and the Bitter Past, which is a great combination. So many questions. So how is Sheriff Porter Beck different than Sheriff Walt Longmire?
Well, Beck is, first of all, not as physically as imposing as Walt Longmire. He's an average height guy, average weight guy. He's not anywhere close to Longmire or somebody like Jack Reacher. He's physically, not going to stop you in your tracks when you see him. Just a normal looking guy. He has a lot of tools in his bag that most people don't have. He has an extraordinary audio memory. And he's one of the few people on earth, and this is a very rare breed of people, but it does exist, who literally can recall every conversation, everything that they hear, whether it's a song on a radio or in a conversation they're part of for the rest of their life. So Porter Beck can tell you just by remembering a conversation where he was on December 22nd, 1978. That's how sharp his audio memory is. He doesn't always hear things correctly. And you remember a song lyric or two incorrectly, but he remembers what he hears or what his brain thinks he hears. So he has that going for him. And he's got a lot of years being what we call a foreign area officer, a FAO in the military. So he's a specialist in the areas and the countries that he gets stationed in. And his language ability really helps him do that. So he's got great insights into how the rest of the world operates and the enemies that the United States has. And it helps him when, as you said, we suddenly have a situation in the bitter past that harkens back to the Cold War. And Beck has experience in that area that really probably nobody else in Nevada does. So it serves him well and occasionally gets him into some trouble. So that's a little bit of a difference between him and Longmire.
Oh, no, that's a great description to help give people who haven't read these books yet, but who are familiar with Longmire to understand a little bit how Beck operates in a similar environment, but in a completely different way. And the thing that you left out was his witty repartee. And I think the next question is, how is Beck different from you? Because I think you have that going on in your head too. Don't deny it.
I won't deny it. I think Beck's a little funnier than me because he has the advantage of me really thinking about his lines, whereas, I have to be more spontaneous most of the time. But yeah, he has my sense of humor, which has a lot of sarcasm with it, and
Snarky.
he's always trying to be snarky and funny. And he likes to tell jokes. He's much better at telling jokes than I am. But yeah, he's got my sense of humor, and I think that serves him well.
It does. It gets him out of some jams and makes him affable. And it's the other side of a character like that that I absolutely loved because, yeah, you have, like you said, the Longmires, the Reachers, that sculpted whatever image of who you have. But then you throw in some snarky and then the inner dialogue of Beck. People are going to love these books and this character and how Beck gets his way around his situations, which you've done a really good job of threading current ish events like the horse situation that you have right now in Nevada, the rare earth minerals, all kinds of things, shades of mercy, a lot of high tech stuff in this book too. So you've blended that Western rugged dude in a rough environment with a unique background and then put him in that third leg of the stool of what the situation is. And I think it's masterfully done. People need to get these books right away. So last question, I wanted to talk a little bit about your previous publishing history. You went through a phase where you were doing some writing, you did some self-publishing stuff, you had a career before this, and you fell upon the Query Shark, and you had Janet Reed as your agent, who's unfortunately passed a little over a year ago now. How has that transition been for you? I'm thinking of the writers who are out there who are listening or watching this show and seeing your journey from self-publishing to nailing a query letter like you did and getting a super agent, and then she's gone, and you have this book deal and you have to move on. So how has that been for you, and what can you give writers who are listening some kind of advice about where they might go? Because self-publishing was a little different when you were doing it a while back. Technology has really advanced since before the bitter past even. So what advice do you have for our listeners who are writers out there?
Well, and it's a great question, and it is an interesting experience between the two that, self-publishing is vastly different than traditional publishing. I think for me, and this is not for everybody, Jeff, as you well know, if you're self-publishing and you're out there and you're having a good experience and you're selling a lot of books, hats off to you, man. I could not put that equation together. I thought I had some good stories, but like you said, I was working full time. It was hard enough to find time to write, let alone market. So when you're self-publishing, you're doing all of that yourself. And it is tough. It is very tough. And a lot of great writers struggle in trying to get their books read when they're self-publishing. So I decided after my second novel that, and maybe this was a little bit of conceit on my part, but I thought, you know what? I think I'm good enough at this point to try to get an agent and get self-published through a traditional publishing. So I did what any smart person should do. And this is what I always tell people who are kind of trying to get into writing. Study everything you can. Take advantage of all of the material and the entire industry that has now built up around how to get published, for writers, because it's out there and a lot of it is very good. I didn't really have any bad experience. I found a few different tools, a few different online courses, and I took advantage where I could. I really studied how to get an agent because I didn't want to make the mistake of wasting a lot of time and then getting depressed over how many rejection letters I got, because rejection, can put any of us down if you get enough of it, and keep us from doing what we love, which is writing. So I did that. I studied. I took every advantage of that material and those resources that I could. And I got people to help me along the way in that respect. And then I started sending out query letters and only sent out about 6 or 7 before I got a positive response from Janet Reed, who was also known as the Query Shark. So she read my manuscript. She loved it. She signed a contract. She sold my book in about 2 months, and the rest was kind of history from there. But then, yeah, like you said, she passed away very suddenly last year. And that was a huge blow, not just for me, but for so many people in the literary community who she had helped guide along the way. Because long before she represented me, I was reading her blog that told people, here's what to do when you send a query letter. Here's what not to do. So she was one of those resources that I used. And so I was very fortunate, however, in that when she did pass away, I needed to find another agent. And rather than having to go down that rabbit hole again of sending out a bunch of query letters and hoping somebody would take note, I simply emailed some other agents that for the most part were agents of friends of mine who are authors now. And I said, do you have any recommendations for agents? And they, were very forthcoming. And I had those people kind of come to me and say, hey, I'd love to talk to you. And it was a pretty quick turnaround. And I'm now represented by David McCormick, who also represents a mutual friend of ours, Alana Berry.
Fantastic. That's a great story. And I hope some people find it helpful as they're trying to figure out what to do in their career. So
Me too.
Dude, I wore my Bouchercon t-shirt because we're gonna see each other at Bouchercon. It's where we met at Bouchercon 2 years ago at San Diego. So I'll never forget standing in the lobby and there you are across the lobby, and I just walked up and said hello. So I've appreciated our friendship ever since, and I look forward to seeing you in New Orleans soon.
Absolutely.
Everybody needs to go to bruceborgos.com. Just full stop. And the Blue Horse, we're both holding it up right here if you're watching on YouTube. Beautiful covers. Minotaur has crushed it for you. You did the work and they followed through on their end. So good good on all of them out there. And people go to bruceborgos.com, get the books, follow Bruce Borgos on social media. You're fairly active. And I really appreciate that. And I enjoy that, watching your posts both on Facebook and Twitter. So find him there. You can read his dossier. There are links on there, thewritersdossier.com or bruceborgos.com. Just go there, get the books, follow bells, buttons, follow, share, and like. And that's all I've got. Bruce, thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks, buddy. I will see you in New Orleans.
I can't wait to see you again. Hey, goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
The Dossier Podcast is a production of The Idea Academy.